right? Because it's on Osho's birthday. So we will record this series of questions and answers, and basically you talking about the experience, how did you get to meet Osho, etc. And so that it becomes available for people and sannyasis in the world, to share. So we will kind of talk like presenting each other, doing the whole stuff.
I've seen what you're going to be doing in the interviews. That sounds terrific.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah,
we're very excited about it.
Yeah.
it's beautiful what you're doing, both of you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. So,
It's a good reason to be on the planet.
Yes. Yes, it is. Okay, so for the interview purposes, and we will be speaking sometimes in Spanish because the whole thing will be in Spanish, and we will subtitle everything. Of course, we will send you the recording before, and you can check it out if you want to edit something out, or I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds
Cool.
great.
Bienvenidos a los que están escuchando esta entrevista.
pues yo soy Shakti, estamos aquí en Shakti y la sabiduría del elefante.
Yo soy Sammo y aquí está con nosotros nuestro querido amigo Subhan, que habla un poquito de español,
Entiende, pero...
No entiendo nada.
No entiendo. Cuando calienta el sol, sí.
Y español es muy malo.
Oh,
Es lástima, pero es la verdad.
Sí. Pero es buen acento.
se oye muy bien, ¿eh?
It's a good accent, though.
Yeah, see, that's right. That's the danger. I speak in Spanish and everybody thinks, oh, this guy can really speak it. And after my 7 sentences that I can speak.
which are all about no more Spanish.
That's right. Lentamente, por favor.
Yeah.
Despacio, por favor. These things I know.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so we will keep talking out in English.
Okay, so you are Subhan.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah.
So please tell us more about, we're celebrating Osho's birthday.
We like to know how Osho arrives at your life.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's really helpful for me to go back to that time and to share with you what happened, because I'm seeing many, many people who are now in that phase of life, who are reaching a point of feeling very lost and feeling that they are living in more chaos than they are in something that feels right to them. And that was what happened to me. This is going back to 1979. I was a lawyer in Baltimore City, Maryland, in the U.S. And I was going to lunch at the Green Earth Cafe. And I saw a friend of mine walking down the street in the same direction. And we stopped and he said, "How are you doing?" And I looked at him and I said, "Do you really want to know?" Not the usual answer to that question. And he looked at me sincerely and he said, "Yes, I really want to know." And I said to him that I felt I was taking 2 steps forward and 10 steps backwards. What was happening was that I was questioning everything that was happening in my life. I no longer wanted to be a lawyer. My marriage had disintegrated by that point. And I wanted to find out, who was I? What was life all about, really? So I started reading many books. And I never got to an Osho book until that afternoon. He suggested I see his brother, who was in the Aquarian Age bookstore next door to the Green Earth Cafe. And long story short, he introduced me to 7 or 8 Osho books on a table. And I don't know why, but I bought 3 because I saw these pictures of this Indian guru with crazy hats. In those days, that's the books that got to the U.S. Osho had a photographic session. Somebody brought like 20 different hats. I mean, really strange hats. So those pictures were used as the cover of these books that he spoke, and then were transcribed into books. I bought 3 of his books, took them home, opened the first book, onto the Supreme Understanding, which then was called Only One Sky in the U.S. And I started laughing and I started crying almost immediately, because I couldn't believe that somebody was actually speaking what I had always understood, but I could never put into words. That was the experience that I had. So in that moment, I realized that the Indian notion that when you're ready, the master finds you, that he had found me. And then I can quick forward. I read those 3 books, bought the rest of them, read them all. At the back of the book, they had descriptions of meditation centers. Found one that was about 25, 30 miles from where I lived. Heard him for the first time there. Went a couple of times, and the woman who was running this very small center told me that she had given me everything she could, that I could go to another center about 10 miles farther away. So long story short, I went to a place called David Deep in Washington, D.C., and it was phenomenal. I mean, I met many, many sannyasins, did my first dynamic there, and knew that it was time for me to meet this guy. And within a couple of months, I was in Pune.
Wow, so this was in the 70s, right?
This was in 1979, yes. And yeah, and it was the most extraordinary time. It was like, not even like COVID. It was something greater. It opened up a door. It opened up a crack in what I call the cosmic egg, so that I could realize that I was carrying all of this mind stuff. And I did several of the groups there, Osho suggested, and came back to the U.S. and opened up a meditation center. Eventually, in 1981, got a call. I was ready to go back to Pune, and got a call from Montclair, New Jersey, asking me if I would come up, because they had some things. Was I a lawyer? And I said, well, yeah, I'm a lawyer. Look, I still have a lawyer mind right now. The only difference between this moment and that moment is there is a tremendous awareness, what I will call a watchfulness, that is able to watch the mind even though the mind continues.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to tell everyone that's listening how important that is to understand. Your mind will not disappear. It will at some point. At some point, when you have this, what Osho called the quantum leap into that space beyond the mind. But while you are in the process of exploring, inquiring, meditating, frustration, in joy, in bliss, in pain, in all the realms that are going to come up in this regard as you start your exploration, as I did mine. The mind doesn't stop. The distance from the mind starts to happen. So I can be sitting here and the mind can be filled with all kinds of notions and ideas and beliefs and judgments, but there's no need to act on it for the most part. And I'm putting my finger here telling you, for the most part. Because my greatest teacher, other than Osho, is my beloved Shanti, who has a really amazing way of pushing buttons so that the mind takes over, the unconsciousness takes over, and then things happen. As we all know, as we all know. So it's good to know that I can laugh about it. I can enjoy it. And to recognize that the mind is still here, no question, but that there's so often no need to go to the mind, to say what the mind wants to say, to do what the mind wants to do. And that's available, guaranteed. I'm sitting here with that understanding, with that experience. And I know that each one of us, you two and anyone else listening, has the same capacity to watch. Osho used the word watch, watchful, watching, the watcher, several thousand times as he spoke to us. And it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago that I even recognized that he had said that. But it's shocking how many times he has told us that watching is the key. Because watching is outside of the mind. And there is a knack. You remember I was trying to figure out the word knack in Spanish? I still haven't figured it out. I hope you have.
Yeah. It's called maña.
Okay.
Maña.
The knack of watching. It's not something you can learn. It's more like balance. So you don't have the balance, for instance, when you were learning how to ride a bicycle. And you didn't know the balance. And so you were shifting, trying to, and many times maybe you fell down. And one day, boom, there was the knack. And you took off. 35 years later, even if you've never ridden a bike again, you have the knack and you can get on a bicycle and ride it. The same is true with watching. So we have to start at some point playing with the possibility that there is a watcher outside of the mind that can watch the mind and what it does. So that's basically what has happened over the last 41 years since I became a sannyasin with Osho.
Yeah.
Watching.
Wow. And you had like in some way kind of a close relation because of what you were saying, right? Because they called you, they asked you were a lawyer, so you were kind of involved more into some of the, I don't know, internal stuff that were happening.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the word is, whether it's internal, but I certainly was deeply involved. In fact, I was the third person on the ranch because Sheila Jayananda, her boyfriend Jayananda, were there, and then I was brought to the ranch to help settle the property that was purchased, which is what I did for the commune at that time. And I came back to the East Coast and then went back to the ranch and lived there for 4.5 years with Osho and with the community.
Wow.
Amazing time. I like to say that in the first stage, which we call Puna 1, the key was relationships and sexuality. We were all learning about relationships with ourselves, with each other, and we were learning about the whole concept of sexuality and how to move into that in a somewhat conscious way.
Yeah.
The ranch, for me, became the second phase, which was power. What is power? How do I give power? How do I want power? How do I use power? How am I afraid of power? And I did in 4.5 years what probably I could not have learned in 4.5 lifetimes on the ranch. And I'm so grateful for everything that happened with Sheila and the people that she was with my relationships with everybody, with the communities inside of the ranch, the communities outside of the ranch. It was an amazing time. We're all using our political games of our minds to seek control over our lives on some way, in some respect. And this was just constantly an issue in my face to how to deal with others, how to maintain my own integrity, how to get what I wanted and needed. And if that sounds familiar to you and to people listening, it's because that seems to be the nature of our time on this planet.
Yeah.
You know, how to shift the energy out there so that I can get what I need. And this is a very difficult experience for all of us.
Yeah.
Because as hard as we try to get what we think we need, it seems like it never materializes in the way we would like it to. And this is, for me, great fuel for people to begin exploring. Why am I here? What's the point of being here? What's the meaning of this life? What am I doing? What am I accomplishing? I accomplished a lot of things on the outside, becoming a lawyer, becoming a certified counselor, becoming a therapist, and helping people in workshops and doing all those things. But the real question that keeps pervading my life is, who am I really? What is this part that Osho, or this reality that Osho talks about when he says, you're not the mind, you're not the body, you're not the emotions, you're not the moods. You are that which is beyond all of that. Well, if that's the case, wow. Because so often it feels like I am this body, I am this mind, I am Subhan, I am this persona. And then the realization is, I didn't have a name when I came on the planet. I'm not going to have one when I leave. So what is this beyond naming? That's beyond the thoughts and ideas and beliefs. What is this? And how do I begin this exploration, and how do I continue in it? And it got very clear very quickly that meditation was a vital part of this. So when Osho suggested dynamic, I went wholeheartedly into dynamic. For 18 months, dynamic every single morning. And I watched as what appeared to be concrete, personality concrete, started to fall off. And a new reality was emerging. But it's slow, and there's a lot of unconsciousness. There's a tremendous amount of unawareness because of our identification, because of my identification with the mind. And to start to understand how the mind functioned and how it created so much misery with so little, I put my fingers up like that, it's like my Spanish, so little joy. Oh yeah, moments of joy. And then the mind has a very selective memory, and it remembers all those wonderful moments of joy, which add up to about 3 days over a lifetime.
Yeah.
Real joy. I mean, real gratefulness to just be alive, to be able to sit here and to see you in Mexico, in Coatepec, and to be able to talk with you.
Yeah.
And have this life energy that really is willing to open and share whatever there is. This is the greatest gift. And we all have that capacity to find what it is within that needs to come to the surface and to be explored and to be understood. This comes down to our first meeting, Sammo, in
Ensenada.
Ensenada, where I was doing Finding the Work You Love, Finding the Life You Love. And that was the very first workshop I did in Pune, and the first workshop I did in Mexico as well.
Mhm.
And I loved being... Yeah.
That's nice.
I love to share it with people. It's been my joy, because I tell people that I'm on permanent vacation,
Yeah.
Yes.
and I have been since 1979. And I have been able to do extraordinary things in my life and travel and meet exquisitely wonderful people and many, many teachers, and everyone that I meet who give me a mirror for me to see more and more and more about who I really am.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Okay, but so let's go back for a second. Would you mind telling us more about your experience, or about, when did you, so you arrived there, and then there's this next step, which is taking sannyas, right?
Yes, that's right.
So
Well,
how was it for you?
I had wanted to take sannyas before I went to India. Once I read Osho, it was clear that this was my master. This was my spiritual teacher. So clearly. We're actually doing Osho discourses through our center online. And we just started today the first part of Tantra, the Supreme Understanding, which was the book that introduced me to Osho. So when I read that and the other books, I was ready. It's like, Osho, come on, crack me open and kill me if you can. And once I got there, I wrote to Pune and I said, I'm not sure exactly when I can come. So should I take sannyas now? But I am coming for sure. And should I just wait? And the response was, wait and take it at the hands of the master. And I felt great about that. So I'm in Pune for 5 days, and I have a darshan with Osho to take sannyas. And I walk in. I had to wear a turban. They were very, very strict about perfumes, because Osho could start coughing with the smell of perfumes, and it was really not good for him. So there I am wearing this like turban. I felt like a Sikh. And and he called me up and started to explain to me and gave me the mala, gave me the name. And I'm watching him, and I'm using my hands now to express what happened. He's talking, he's gesticulating with his hands, and he's telling me about the meaning of my name. And I'm just looking at him. And I'm looking at his eyes. And suddenly I'm realizing there's nobody home. There's a voice speaking, there's language coming, there's hand movement, there's a body physically sitting there, but in the eyes, there's nobody home. There's no personality. There's no somebody. There is nobody there. And I just realized that I could go deeper and deeper into this thing, and to use a colloquial expression, it scared the shit out of me.
Right.
And then he started talking, and he said, my first part of my name is Prato Subhan. And he said, Prato means prayer, a silent prayer.
Wow.
Words will never get you to God. And at that very moment, I looked over to my left to see who told him that I was so full of words. And at the moment I realized I've been here for 5 days and virtually nobody really knows who I am. And I recognized that he could see the mind filled with words.
Yeah.
And it was a step for me to begin to look at, to explore, to understand that there were so many words that were getting in the way of the silence, and that I barely knew what silence was. The only silence at that time that I knew was the outside silence. When I was trying to meditate, not the dynamic, but before that, before I even met Osho in book form, I was doing Vipassana. I was sitting silently and watching, and it was impossible. I couldn't sit still. So the only silence that I could create was the outer silence. But that was always the possible distraction of noise coming, of sound coming while I was meditating. So whenever it did, it stopped this notion of silence. And I could never be comfortable with it. I could never go, But, once dynamic happened and the stop happened, stop. And it was an opportunity to let the silence drown the mind. And often it did, and often it didn't.
Yeah.
In those 15 minutes, universes came and went. The 15 minutes of silence.
Yeah.
But there were those tastes of the inner silence, and they were delicious. And they kept calling me back and calling me back. So being with him so close, so physically close, and later hearing him talking about that he was a presence, not a personality, that it was existence presenting itself through him. There was this big aha, that's the experience. I was sitting there and existence was pouring through him, through his body, through his words, through his articulation with his hands, directly into me. And that was the real beginning of a love affair that has stayed with me till this moment.
Yeah.
So that answers that question about how
Yeah.
and,
That works.
and it was so beautiful to hear people call me by the sannyas name, because they didn't know my other name. They didn't know my birth name. And then to go out into the world and to realize I'm living in a world that only knows my old name. I told my family and I told my friends, and many of them started to call me by my sannyas name. But it wasn't until on the ranch, the same, that they would call me by my sannyas name. Then when I came out again, I went back to the East Coast where I was raised. And again, I had this birth name that was following me. In 1988, I went back to Pune. Osho had settled back there. And my beloved Shanti and I went back. And of course, everyone that knew me from before knew me as Subhan. And those that didn't now knew me as Subhan. And so the whole world that I lived in, the past name really started to disappear. In 1990, Shanti and I went to Japan. We opened up a meditation center there because we needed to make money in order to stay in Pune. And again, I told everyone my name was Subhan. And so where I was teaching at the university there, Ritsumeikan University, with the people that I met there, I was Subhan. So from 1988 until now, I have been Subhan. I legally changed my name. Wow. So my passport and my driver's license. And I am very familiar with the split between am I Subhan or am I Samuel, or Sammy, which was my legal name.
Sammy?
Sammy, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can understand the difficulty that many people face when they have a sannyas name and a legal name, and they're living in an environment where the sannyas name is strange to people, and all the difficulties that people can have. But if there's one thing that I can say, it is something settles when it gets clear that this gift of the sannyas name is the name that you wish to be called. Then it's just a question of dealing with your own mind and your own fears and your own worries that others are not going to accept you because you have a strange name or whatever. You have to remember, from 1979 to 1985, 86, actually through 1988, we wore orange clothing. We wore red clothing, maroon clothing, and a mala. So imagine, I'm Subhan with a mala, with this strange colored clothing, and this really distinguished us from everybody else. And the decision to continue to wear the clothing, which I did, until 1988, when we came to Pune, and Osho basically dropped that as far as the outer clothing, and to wear maroon robes in the ashram, and then white robes in the evening meetings. It got easier and easier. And I can only say to people who have that conflict inside of whether or not to keep the sannyas name or whether to stay with the birth name, that the family's going to be upset, you have to make a decision there. But recognize the split that you feel when you do feel a connection with that sannyas name, but you're living in a world that's that name. And then at some point you make a decision to either maintain both of them, or maybe you decide to just jump into the fire. And my suggestion,
Yeah.
But I would never tell you anything that you have to do or should do. No, this is your life. You live it the way you want to live it. But if you really want it to be an adventure, the adventure of adventures, jump wholeheartedly into your sannyas if you are a sannyasin. And if you're not, jump into sannyas. If you feel any connection with Osho, and I'm guessing that on December 11th, everybody is coming here because they have some kind of connection with Osho. Whether it's a lover of him, maybe they've read books and seen videos, maybe they've done his meditations. There's a lot that Osho has spoken about taking sannyas. So that's another whole story, and I'm not here to advertise.
We need you.
That's right. Only $19.95 for you. Just
yeah.
So after the ranch, I can tell you a little bit more. So the ranch was stunning. I mean, on so many levels. There are many, many stories to share that would take me a long time. Both Pune 1, from the time I came back, the ranch, I left the ranch. The beginning of finding the work you love started when I went back into the world and realized I've got to make money. We were basically broke, and I knew I had to do something. I love collectibles. I've had collectibles as a young boy, virtually all my life until then. And I realized, okay, I can source collectible things and I can sell them. I know how to do that. And I know how to find people who are looking for collectibles. So we opened up a store after a short while of me accumulating the inventory for a store. We opened up a store and were very successful, but we wanted to go back with Osho. So we tried to find other sannyasins who would split the time coming to the store and handling the store and staying where the house that we had rented. And then we would go to Pune, and then we would come back and they could go to Pune.
Yeah.
Well, we tried that with one person and then with a couple, and it didn't work out. So I looked at Shanti and I said, Shanti, we're selling the store. And we did, and we made enough money that it was easy for us to go and easy for us to stay there for a couple of years. And then it was time to move on. So I come back now to those couple of years, which is called Pune 2. From 1988 to 1990, we were in what is called the resort. At that time, it was also, most of us referred to it as the ashram, because that's what we called it in Pune 1. And a whole new world was opening. Now, we had been with Osho in 1988. I'd been with Osho for over 9 years as a sannyasin, and Osho and Shanti had been with him since 1974. So we're talking about 14, 15 years. And of course, there were a number of people who came to this now called Pune 2, who had never been to the ranch, who had never been to Pune 1, but had been in Pune for the last 6 or 8 months. And they were the establishment. And we walked in, and a lot of people that knew us were very happy to see us. And we were really so blissful in connecting with people that we knew. But these people that didn't know us, they were like, who are you? And, why are you so, known by people here? I'm the one who's been here for 6 months, and I'm part of the office now. And anyway, but it was so intriguing because the power trips of the ashram or of the commune on the ranch had gone so deep that it was like watching something on TV, the people that were still trying to claw up to power in the commune. And I came for one reason, that was just to be with Osho and to be in his presence. And I had no interest in doing any of that. And I was so touched and relieved that the lessons were about power had really sunk in as I was working. Shanti and I both were working with someone. We were giving out jobs. We were asked to give out jobs. And there were 2 people in the office at that time. One of them who was much more like us in terms of the experiences that she had on the ranch. And so she wanted us to bring that quality to helping people find jobs in the commune. And the other person there was another person brought in because there was another person who was really into power trips in the office and wanted one of her persons to be on this very important thing. Mm. And at some point, she would always be very upset with how we would assist people in finding things. She would say, no, you really have to be selective. You have to cull through. You have to make sure you don't send people to the wrong place. And I looked at her and I said, I don't think you really understand that all we could do is just put up a blackboard with the jobs that are available and let people go and find out. What a great opportunity for them to find out what they really want. What an opportunity for the people who are in those positions to learn how to deal with people on that level. So then that came to an end, and I was ready to start working with the group leaders, because that was a feeling inside of me that actually started back in Pune in 79 when I did groups there, and I saw that there were some group leaders who were just exquisite, and then there were others who were terrible. And I really felt a kinship with all of the ones that were so beautiful in their ways of dealing with people. And I felt deeply touched by what they did, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So in 1988, there I was, now leading groups in Pune, and started with Finding the Work You Love, and then moved on to several other groups. We stayed there until March of 1990. In January 19th, Osho left the body. And it was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life on this planet.
Wow, yeah.
Because I was sitting there, and as Amrito, his doctor, was telling us that he had left the body, at first it was like, what? What? Is this a cosmic joke or something? Because I knew that he was not well. I knew that he was having difficulty, but I never envisioned that he would actually leave the body then. And I sat there for about a half an hour crying with the words, I missed. He's gone now. Recognizing how unconscious I had been and how the critical mind was coming in and basically telling me, you missed. And then in March, Shanti and I went to Japan, and I told her she wanted to go there back in 1973 and made a short stop in Pune and stayed and found her real Zen master in Pune, because Osho, even in those days, was talking a great deal about Zen. So we went to Japan. She wanted to go, and she said, please come with me. And I said to her, I will go because there's a 3-month visa available to all U.S. citizens at that time. I'm not sure what it is these days. But I said, I'll go 3 months. Well, 5 years later, we left. But the advantage that I had is that I worked at a wonderful university called Ritsumekan University, and it's equivalent like the major Ivy League colleges, Yale, Harvard, those kinds. It's like one of the top 3 universities in Japan. There's Kyoto University, there's Tokyo University, and there's Ritsumekan. So a friend of mine got me the job, and they love lawyers because, and there's a reason for it, because the law bar that you have to take and pass happens once a year, and it is the most difficult test imaginable, and only 2% of the people that take the test pass it. So 98% of these poor Japanese people who want to be lawyers fail it. I met somebody who was taking it for the 11th time.
Oh, no.
It's expensive to take it, and it can only be taken once a year. So they look up to lawyers who were called bengoshi. And I was a bengoshi, and they like to touch the feet of the bengoshi because they are superior people. They are considered to be, the cream of the cream. I didn't want to tell them that in the U.S., lawyers are looked way down upon, as shysters and ambulance chasers, and all the terrible things that some lawyers are called here in the States. So
In Mexico too.
many places, but not in Japan. So I got this wonderful job, and I got 5.5 months paid vacation.
Wow.
So I got a 3-month chunk, and then I taught. Then I got a 2.5 month chunk, and then I taught. So for the 3 months, we went back to Pune. And the 2.5 months, we went to the U.S.
Oh.
So we were never physically there every year, but we were there for 6.5 months a year.
Oh, see.
So then we left, and we came back to Pune. We were there in Pune from 1995 to the end of 1997. So altogether, I figured that I'd actually lived in Pune for about 7 years, and Shanti for about 11 or 12.
Wow.
And it was extraordinary again in a very different way.
Yeah.
Because I saw how willing I was to kind of fall into a rut. I could do my workshops. I could go back into my little cave. We had an office. It was called the Osho, something like the Osho World Network. I can't think of what exactly it was called, but it was to help people going back to the West and how they could re-immerse into the culture and the work that the Osho Marketplace Network, OMN. But I saw that I was using it really as a kind of like a hiding place. So I would play volleyball, and of course I would go to the Osho discourses in the nighttime. But I realized that this is not helping. Well, at the end of 1997, Shanti was diagnosed with cancer, and we had gone to Germany, and I was doing workshops there, and she got the diagnosis there. And so instead of returning to Pune, we immediately returned to the U.S. because the doctor in Germany wanted to put her in the hospital immediately. And she said, I'm not going to go into a German hospital. I'm going to go home. So we went back to Seattle and immediately took care of that. She had an operation, and now we're talking about, this is 23 years later.
Yeah.
So
It's good.
the life is very good. Yeah. So we came back to the U.S. and the very first thing was, I got to make some money here. So what am I going to do? Well, I gave up my law practice, and so collectibles. Why not? I can do it. I can still do it. Let's see. eBay was just beginning at the time. And I was tremendously successful in sourcing up materials, especially old books, and selling them on eBay. Buy a book for $1 and sell it for $200. And this was happening rather frequently. And it was just wonderful. So taking care of that, Shanti was taking care of her body. And let's see. Where to bring you up to date. We opened up a meditation center again. Osho gave me the name Premchaya, which means shadow of love, back in 1979. And I opened up the center when I came back to the States. We closed it. We opened it up in Japan. We closed it. And then we again opened it up when we came to Seattle. So it's been a continuum from 1979 until now. Premchaya, the shadow of love. We have a trading as name, which is the world of meditation.
Yeah.
But this center has been open almost 41 years.
Wow.
So
And it's in Seattle.
it's now in Seattle. We've been in Seattle with the center since we arrived, which was in the end of 1997. So it's been here in Seattle for 23 years.
Wow.
And we're still going strong online. We thought it was over because we had to close down the center physically because nobody could come when COVID hit here. And it hit here very hard in the beginning. So we learned very quickly that we had to isolate.
Yeah.
And I immediately jumped on to Zoom. Shanti had an experience the year before, I think, or 2 years before, doing the Mystic Rose with Zoom. And that was out of necessity because people got colds and they couldn't. So they opened up Zoom and they finished the 21 days on Zoom. So we knew that we could do things like that.
Yeah.
And now we've been doing them since early March. And it's been a beautiful experience. The realization is that we still have to find more income sources because we were an Airbnb doing very well, gone. We were a meditation center doing workshops and doing classes and doing events and doing meditations. Gone here. We were traveling all over the U.S., Lower California, Southern California, San Francisco, Colorado Springs in Colorado, Tempe in Arizona, New York City, all of that.
People, right?
All of that gone.
Yes.
Gone. So it was like all of a sudden we had no income, and we still had the center, which is an expensive proposition, especially in Seattle. It's a big house is the center. We have a small little apartment in the back of it, but it's a 3,500 square foot building, and it's right in the heart of Seattle, which is one of the most expensive real estate places in the world. And so we're spending quite a bit of money just to maintain the premises here for hopefully the day when we'll be able to have things returned to the center.
As pure as possible, I guess.
Yeah.
It is a major part of meditation to watch and so translation is one of those things, or court reporters would be another one of those things, where you can't let the mind come in to try and interpret, because then you're behind the eight ball. You're lost.
Yeah.
And the person's already days ahead. Yeah. So you really have to, in a way, be so present to what's being said and how it's being said, that the connection with the mind trying to control it kind of gets lost.
And other thing that I see about Sammo is no ego. He don't try to give his point of what the
Right.
therapist is talking about. He's only a conduit
Mm-hmm.
to that.
Mhm.
I feel it like that.
So here's what I understand. We're not enlightened, although we are enlightened, meaning that we are already in that state of being, but we don't know it because we are so identified with the mind. So there will be times as meditators that we will be watchful and able to watch the mind. There'll be times when the mind slows down and even disappears. But there will also be times when the ego is going to come in.
Yes.
And that's guaranteed. So this is people who are out there who are in the process of this journey back to what they already are, is to just remember that we will remember and we will forget. We will have moments of tremendous clarity and we will have moments of tremendous chaos.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen in our work, and that's going to happen in our relationships. That'll happen everywhere. The moment that we can step back from the mind and not make these things that we call unconscious into problems, into judgments about ourselves, it gets to be easy. It gets to be fun.
Yes.
I do Zazen every Friday, and I invite people to come join us. 5:30 Seattle time, 5:30 to 7. We have a Zen teacher named Pranesh, who is a sannyasin, and also he's a Zen priest. And what I discovered that I love about Zen, my Zen practice of watching is to do counting. So you count the in-breath, 1 silently, and then out-breath, then 2, up to 10. And then once you reach 10, 9, 8, back to 1. And if you get lost, you go back to 1.
Oh.
So that's one way of doing Zazen. what I found so wonderful about Zazen was I would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11, 12, 13. This is a mistake. And then suddenly you realize, like, what? I'm up to 13? I'm supposed to be going back to 9 after 10. And then I realized it was a moment of tremendous beauty and tremendous grace. The realization was, so what? Go back to 1. Okay, 1, 2. It was no big deal. There was no critical mind to beat up some other part for having gone unconscious. And it was such a beauty that the grace of this understanding that this was just a game to play and to enjoy and to watch the breath and to watch the numbers. And if I got up to 6 and I forgot 7, go back to 1 again. This is part of the game. It's like, okay, you're on the sliding board, go down the slide and come back around and go up again. And it just enhanced the deep understanding that has been growing and growing, that there's nothing that's needed to force anything other than to be aware that whatever is coming in this direction of whoever this person is a gift from existence, and that it can be experienced, understood, penetrated. So there's no bad, there's no good, there's no negative, there's no positive, except when the mind is identified with, and then, oh, that's terrible.
But let's go back to let's say the Osho experience.
Yes.
Because I was thinking you were talking so much about the power trips and all the work and all that happened for you to be conscious or to get more conscious about all that process, the mind. And now and then we were talking more about me, like talking about my translation and sometimes for me it's kind of hard not to get the mind, telling me, oh, don't get so, I don't know how to say it,
Inflated.
Yeah, inflated, I was, yeah, yeah, that's right. And also, this connects to my other questions because we were talking the other day and you got a very, I don't know, beautiful and meaningful present from Osho after he left his body. And, how does the mind react to something like that, like how not to feel inflated with something like that,
Okay, so here's what I've learned.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with inflation. There's nothing wrong with feeling proud about what you've done. Now, in our Christian Judaic training, we were told that that's bad. But this is absurd because there are going to be moments of feeling great that you've done something, of feeling happy that you've done something. And it's perfectly okay. The answer is to get to the knack of watching, because the inflation happens. And I'm trying to find a better word for that. It's the ego expands. Yeah, that's another way of saying it. The ego will expand. There are times when I've done some work with someone, and afterwards there's this kind of gloating, this feeling like, wow, that was really great. I am really happy about what happened. And then, of course, the critical mind wants to come in and say, no. You have to be, you can't be so.
You need to be humble or something.
You need to be humble. Yeah, that one. That is, again, to borrow French, bullshit.
Yeah.
It is. There's no need to be humble because that's just another game that the mind wants to play. How about this one? Be who you are and watch. The watching can give us the capacity to see clearly the way the mind functions. And that ego expansiveness will slowly start to dissipate on its own if it's not fed. But not because it's something wrong and terrible and bad, because it doesn't make any sense. Because it's a false reality that we are this ego. But that can only be discovered when we're watchful and outside of our identification with the mind. So to reach a place of saying whatever happens here is exactly the way it's supposed to happen. So just watch it. Now this goes against all of our conditioning, all of our training.
Yeah, absolutely.
But how are we ever going to reach a place of accepting who we are unless we do?
Yes.
And it's not about becoming something that is acceptable. It's about accepting who we are right here, right now. Yes, I have an ego. There's an ego in this mind. Yes, there are times when the awareness is not here and the ego takes over. And then there's the great gift of suddenly remembering and of stepping back and watching the ego and recognizing that it doesn't have any value in what it's doing, that it's not enhancing the quality of my life. It's detracting from it. It's taking it away. Because in that expansiveness, there's a cost to other people that we are connected with. We want to expand so it makes less room for them to expand.
Mm-hmm.
That's the unconscious part of the ego. The ego wants to be superior, so it has to, in a way, keep people from being superior. But that's not known until we can step back and start to watch it. Then there is nothing to do because life will take care once the truth of what's happening is seen so clearly. But the mind never trusts that. The mind wants to beat you up for having an ego, which is really a subtle ego beating up an ego.
Yeah,
Yes.
another form.
I beat myself up. Who is the I and who's the myself? Come and do the awareness intensive.
Yes.
And then you won't have just the theory, you'll have the experience. And that's tremendously valuable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well.
¿Tienes alguna última pregunta? ¿Que es un mensaje para los demás?
Sí. Can you give us a message for the sannyasins, the people that want to know about Osho? Or
Mm-hmm. Well, the first one that comes immediately is, I'll be back.
I'll be back.
In the meantime, I'm on Zoom. So if you are interested in Osho, 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, at 12 o'clock Seattle time, we play an Osho discourse, which is usually 45 to 55 minutes. We play a part of a discourse, never the full one, because they're always longer. But so Osho, and we're now doing Tantra, the Supreme Understanding, which will knock your socks off. Guaranteed. That you can find out more about Osho by just attending some of the things that we're doing regularly. And there are beautiful people all over the planet that are doing Osho things as well. Osho.com, which will give you access to all of his words and to many of his videos for a relatively small price. I think it's something like $5 a month or something like that. That you can read his books and you can see his videos and some very inexpensive ways of being in touch with it. And there are meditations. You are in Coatepec. What is the name of your center?
Shakti y la sabiduría del elefante.
I won't try and repeat that.
But we are giving some Osho meditations, dynamic and Kundalini too.
Thank you. And, you know, Osho used to say, chiraveti, chiraveti, which means go on. It means sige, sige. Go on. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah. You know, we need support. I have a list of like 15 things that I call the support, but there's really there is the master, there is meditation, and there is the Sangha. And those three are essential parts of the support that's needed.
Yes.
It's all fun and games in the beginning on a certain level. Yes, sannyasins, and I got my mala, I got my name, I've got all these wonderful friends. And if you start, before you take sannyas, it looks like this. There is this barrier that we have created so that we don't see the underbelly of our mind. And you take sannyas and you know what happens, don't you?
Ah.
It starts to come up. And this is where a lot of people stop. They stop meditating, they move away. But if you have a thirst and you have those three supports, it is the trip of trips. It is the adventure of adventures. To find your own inner source. To move into the depth of this mystery of life that we only have a little taste of, so we're very superficially on the surface of the ocean. And we never really penetrate into the depths of the ocean. On the surface, there's a lot of turmoil. And we all know it. We know it in our relationships. We know it in our connections with money and with power and with fame and with family and all the other relationships that we have. There comes a point where it's essential to start that movement in. That's what happened to me. I'm certain that's what happened to you too. Yeah. It's very easy to lose connection with that as the going gets rougher. But if we maintain that relationship with the master, with meditation, and by the way, the master isn't necessarily Osho. Whatever master calls you. I mean, Osho called me so clearly. Mm-hmm. I love many of the spiritual teachers that are in the world. Kabir, who is a teacher from back in India. I have a quote. I have many quotes on my walls, by the way, in our kitchen. There are quotes upon quotes of many, many different teachers, including Osho. But I'm saying Kabir because every time someone says something and it goes boing, that's such a great, wonderful experience. So here's what Kabir said. Wherever you are is the entry point. Wherever you are is the entry point. Right here, right now. The next moment when you're in the marketplace, right there, right now. The moment that you're in the bathroom, right there, right now. Wherever you are is the entry point. You are the essential nature. You are the Buddhahood that doesn't know because the identification with the mind is so strong. But it doesn't change the reality that wherever you are is the entry point. So this is what I mean when I say, find the master that calls you. Find the master that touches your heart. If it's Osho, wonderful. If it's Muji, wonderful. If it's Adyashanti, wonderful. If it's Eckhart Tolle, if it's Buddha, if it's Jesus, if it's Mahavir, if it's, and we can go on and on and on. Yeah. Just make sure that you have the support of a spiritual teacher, of a master. Because for me, I don't know how it's possible to be on this planet and to find any bliss, to find any gratitude without having that kind of connection with has arrived into who we also already are, but we don't know it. So he becomes a mirror for us, a reflection. To see it, to understand it, to penetrate it. And the little bit of work that I can do to help clear away some of the psychological rubbish that we are carrying, so that the master can enter with the meditations and with the depth of the silence that he brings even in his words. So that's the wonderful thing about this birthday celebration for Osho, that it's just an opportunity to remember what we're doing here on the planet. And yes, some things the mind says are incredibly important, but ultimately, to not know oneself, to not know the depth of who we really are, that's what Osho stayed on the planet for. That's the gift that he has been giving us again and again. And we can use that gift with meditation and with the Sangha to keep going deeper and deeper inside. So I want to say thank you, bless you.
Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you, thank
Have a
you.
wonderful time.